All right, everybody. It's Dr. William Clark here. Glad to be with you all for another episode, and want to provide you with an update on the federal freeze on loans and grants and how this impacts nonprofit organizations. Earlier this week, the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, issued a memo directing federal agencies to temporarily pause federal financing and financial assistance to organizations who are dependent upon federal funding. And this was to align funding decisions with President Trump's policies. As you recall, those policies in part include ending funding and financing of DEI work from utilizing federal dollars, as well as environmental initiatives. And so this kind of put folks in an uproar earlier this week, created mass confusion. Folks were unsure about what to do, how to interpret these things, and it created widespread concern about organizations who do depend upon funding from the federal government. As a result, there was a lawsuit that was filed. A federal judge, as a result of their decision, put a freeze on a restraining order, rather, on that particular movement from OMB. But OMB, as of yesterday, rescinded the memo to alleviate confusion, according to The Guardian. However, the Office of Management and Budget stressed that it will continue to emphasize efforts to align federal spending with President Trump's priorities and initiatives. So as we talked about yesterday, this is really important for organizations who receive funding specifically to do DEI work or have written into their proposals, grants, contracts, RFP responses, etc., DEI activity. Now, I wanted to make sure we distinguish between that and those organizations who, from a culture standpoint, decide to have DEI initiatives as a part of its culture, right? As a part of its makeup, that we as an organization will always be inclusive. We will always be diverse. We will always have equity in our approach. That is totally different from a culture standpoint than organizations who pursued and sought after funding specifically for DEI initiatives. Nonetheless, this freeze, the rescinding rather of this memo, seems to have assuaded some concerns from groups who are heavily dependent upon federal dollars to operate. But I want to raise to your attention, I think, issues bigger than the rescinding of this memo. And even if this comes back online, right? Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, as an organization, I want to encourage you, challenge you to think about issues, topics that are much bigger than policy shifts. What this firestorm this week offered to a lot of folks is a glimpse into the power and the necessity of crisis management, as well as disaster recovery and disaster preparedness. Most nonprofits don't have those types of conversations, but for those that are unfamiliar with it, those conversations around disaster preparedness, disaster recovery, those conversations are had within organizations to prepare for what ifs, whether it's the act of God, building burns down, there's a hurricane, there's an outbreak such as COVID. What was our response plan then when COVID took place? Many of us did not have one and had to make up one on the fly, particularly in the nonprofit arena. But if that comes back, what is the plan of action? How do we operate? Do we all move to Zoom? Do we move to Microsoft Teams? Do we move to Google Meet or any other platform? Do our team members have all the equipment that they need to operate at home or remotely, et cetera, et cetera? What happens if our finances take a hit or a dip? And for those of you who have been around for a long time, you know, this potential crisis of not having federal dollars, it's not new, right? Because this happens on the state level, the city level, the local level, the private level, and of course the federal level, where finances can change, funding can change, commitments can change. And so it's not unique to President Trump and the Office of Management and Budget, what is happening, what has happened, or the threat of what could happen. But it is important for you as an organization to be thoughtful about how you will approach these activities should it happen. And so have you established a preparedness plan? I want to challenge you to do so. Now, if you don't have one in place, go ahead and visit us at elipatrick.com and schedule a consultation to talk with someone from our team so we can help you through that And if you want to have us come and facilitate that conversation, whether it's virtual or in person, just again, reach out to us at elipatrick.com. Again, that's elipatrick.com. So a couple of things to think about when you're developing a crisis response plan. You want to immediately go into a planning mode where you're engaging key stakeholders, the senior staff, customers, and your board members. You want to make sure that you're having these key conversations with them. Next, you want to make sure you're leading through the process where you're making decisive decisions. You're clear on information. You have the right facts. You're not responding to hearsay on social media or what your colleagues are saying, but it's based off of facts, and you're providing guidance. Next, you want to make sure your board is on board. You want to make sure that they are clear on their role, their responsibilities, and the advocacy and support you need from them. The next thing you want to do, number 4, is make sure that you have funding diversity in your portfolio. You want to make sure you have grants and earned income and individual revenue coming in, contract revenue coming in, et cetera, et cetera. If you haven't done so already, number 5, start the advocacy process and working with your local legislators. This includes your state and city representatives, but then also include your national legislators. If you're not a part of their ecosystem, if you're not on their radar, they're not going to think of you or notice you. If you haven't done this before, start small in groups and then start to develop your own identity so that these legislators can remember you. Lastly, and but not least, make sure you establish culturally within your organization this attitude of resilience, and that the organization can and will handle change, that we have effective change management habits and beliefs and practices. These are the things that I think I want to encourage you to think about and raise to your attention more than what's happening with Washington, because things will happen with Washington, things will happen at your state capital, things will happen in your city capital as well, and you will have to still navigate through these challenges and changes no matter what. So if you want to have this conversation, I'm happy to do that. Someone from our team is happy to do that. If you want to get a hold of us, go to elipatrick.com and schedule your consultation. And let's talk about your project. Again, that's elipatrick.com. My name is Dr. William Clark. This is my time. We'll catch you guys on the flip side. See you, everybody.